Mark, how are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man.
Good.
Thank you as always for coming on. So this is a live show, Mark, unlike the last time we were together. And, for people that are listening, just again, if you're thinking about what's happening in Princeton, before you form an opinion, there's always things you want to know. And that is the point of tonight's show. And again, I am welcome to the World Report. I am Josh Wilton. I co-own and run the #1 boutique real estate company here in central New Jersey. And we've helped thousands of people buy homes. So I've really been on the front lines of the impact of how policies impact homeowners, buyers, investment decisions, landlords, tenants, especially here in Princeton and Mercer County. So tonight, Mark and I actually have an agenda. We're very organized human beings. So we're going to talk about the Princeton governance model, because I always think it's important to start with that, Mark, because I don't think people really know. And until you told me last time, I'll be honest, 18 years in, I didn't know. We're going to talk about the state housing mandate, right? Obviously, how that impacts us here in Princeton. We'll talk about some of the new zones. I think it's always important. We're going to talk about how taxes are allocated in Princeton. So when people see it in McCaffrey's, they realize like you're not cruising around town in a Maserati or anything. And we're going to talk about, what's being discussed and decided about Westminster, some of the other zones. And we know that the budget's coming up, right? And we're going to talk about that tonight. So again, we'll kind of get to it. So again, welcome to Mark Freda. I call him Mr. Mayor, as we all should. And Mark, just for context, for both of my listeners who are on tonight, one of which is my dad. Hi, Dad. Why don't you start with how long you've been in Princeton, what made you get into politics, and how long you've been mayor? Because it's been a minute.
Yeah, sure. So, Josh, thanks for having me here. But and maybe you get 3 guests tonight instead of 2. But I've lived in Princeton my entire life, from the day I was born till today. So love the place. Been very happy to be here. Very lucky to be here. I got into politics, I think, grew out of my involvement with the Princeton Fire Department and Princeton Fire Department's a municipal department. I started going to borough council meetings because of budget concerns, underfunding the fire department back in the 1970s. And one day, then Mayor Barbara Sigmund of Princeton Borough said to me, you're coming to all these meetings. Why don't you run for council? And I said, good idea. So I did.
On top of everything else you were doing at the time.
Yeah. So, my first gig in politics in town was 13 years on the borough council. And now this is just started my 6th year as mayor of the combined Princetons.
That's incredible. 6th year. And from Mark, just because I do think it's relevant, and I know you personally, and happy to have called you my friend for as long as I have here in town. So why don't you tell everybody what the mayor of Princeton gets paid? Number one, let's just start with that, because I think it's relevant.
I think I'm up to a whopping $19,000 a year.
$19,000 a year. And how many hours a week are you committing to this position?
More than I even try to calculate. It's a full-time job plus.
Full-time job plus. And he has a full-time job that he actually works to support himself. So this is a very tireless human being. And again, agree or don't disagree on policy. I get it. That's life. But just, I hope people watching, both of you, realize that this is Princeton's biggest cheerleader. So Mark, I do sincerely thank you for everything you do. So let's talk about how Princeton governance works. Because again, I don't think, as I call myself included, the armchair political class, where we just get angry when stuff happens when we weren't involved in the process leading up to it, right? What everybody's role is. So why don't we start with your role and the council's role and the difference therein?
Yeah, sure. So the municipality of Princeton, that's what we call it. We're careful not to use, we're not a borough, we're not a township. So we're the municipality of Princeton. We do have the borough form of government. So in the borough form of government, it's what's called a weak mayor and a strong council. So the mayor runs all the meetings. The mayor is like the head cheerleader. The mayor's the face of the town. The council pretty much votes on just about everything. And the mayor only votes if there's a tie. And the governing body, the mayor and council, the real purpose of that group, the 7 of us, is to set strategy, policy, really look at big picture and do stuff from 30,000 feet and try not to get in the way of just the stuff that's going on day to day. In a perfect world, that's pretty much what happens.
Okay. And I know you're not, part of it necessarily, but you have a very bird's eye view of it. Why don't you explain the role of the planning board, the zoning board? Like, why don't we talk about that?
Sure. Planning board is made up of 9 members, 2 of which are governing officials. One's the mayor or the mayor's appointee, and the other's a member of the council. So the planning board does things like, they just did the master plan not too long ago, right? So that's one of the main responsibilities of the planning board is to hopefully every 10 years update the master plan for the town. And that sets objectives, things that are going to be reflected in zoning ordinances, things like that. Review of land use applications, right? So somebody's going to do a more significant development. It's probably going to go to the planning board versus the zoning board. What you're developing, how big it is, how well it follows zoning ordinances will determine whether it goes to the zoning board or the planning board. So usually the bigger developments are going to go to the planning board. So you have site plans, major and minor subdivisions, go to the planning board. The zoning board, and important to note with the zoning board, where, as I said, there's myself and another elected official on the planning board, the elected officials have no role with the zoning board. And you're not allowed, there should be never any political influence on the members of the zoning board by the elected officials. So we're supposed to stay away from that. And,
Princeton's Department of Justice, the zoning board.
Yeah. yeah. Except we actually do it. But anyway.
Right.
But, the zoning board, you could have appeals to the zoning board, or you just come in and say, oh, I need a variance. Maybe you want to build an ADU and you want to, or you expand your house and you exceed the floor area ratio or, something like that. And the zoning board's and I think our zoning board has a pretty good history of being pretty practical. Does this make sense? Does it fit the neighborhood? Things like that. So,
right. And, bad timing, because I usually like to at least listen in. Like tonight is the zoning board meeting for the Jugtown project, which is my corner. It's not, well, you know what, Mark? It is my corner. I'm just claiming it. I'm going to put my flag up. This is my corner of Princeton. I'm not giving it back. We're talking about, obviously, housing, and we're going to talk about that's the whole point of the show, policy and property. So I think that hopefully clears it up, and we'll talk. I like to end the show. I'd like you to, like last time, where people can get involved. So let's talk taxes, Mark, because man, oh man, oh man, man, oh man. I'm not saying it from a negative perspective, but it's not even the third rail. It's like the rail, right? Among many right now in Princeton and in New Jersey. Why don't we remind everybody where the money goes from a percentage perspective?
Yep. So the town collects the taxes for the town, the schools, and the county. The town gets about 21% of the money that you pay in your quarterly taxes. Let me see. The schools get about 48%. The county gets about 28%. There's a Princeton open space tax, which is 1%, and a Mercer County open space tax, which is another 2%. So the vast majority of the money is not coming to us, to the municipality, although, that's where people stop and complain first is with us, even though it's less than a quarter of the money being paid.
Right. So the town gets 21% of every tax dollar collected.
Yeah.
Not
if you put in the open space, it's 22. Sorry, 22.
22. Fine. Well, right. But it's not like that's not going, that 1% tax isn't going to the workings of the town. It's a different allocation.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
So let's talk some state level housing, right? Because I know you are involved with mayors throughout the state. And obviously, again, I always say this, but it's from a selfish perspective. You're sleeping under a rock if housing, you don't realize that housing is probably the biggest topic nationally that we're seeing, housing affordability. And then in New Jersey, why are they building all these apartments? They're ruining the state and all of those things. And one of the things that you and I chatted about was, let's take a step back. And I've talked about this many times in the show. Let's talk about the state housing mandate, right? And then we'll sort of move into what Princeton's doing to stay ahead of it. And the builders who want maybe to take advantage of it.
Yeah. So, back in 1974, Mount Laurel decision in New Jersey, people sued the town of Mount Laurel. because they had zoning in place that pretty much said, okay, we're going to make sure by size of the lots and other requirements that unless you're at a certain economic level, you're never going to be able to buy property in this town. So that set a whole wheel in motion. Just recently, we put in for our 4th round obligation with the state. Each round is a 10-year period. So we just started the 4th round, just ended the 3rd round. Our obligation for the 4th round is 364 units. So we have gotten state approval on a plan that lists a whole number of different sites and talks about here's how we're going to provide the number of units. And I think the important point, Josh, is how do the units get built? More importantly, how are they paid for? So, right? So there's only a few ways to do it. If you build a development that's all affordable housing units, there are tax credits, things like that, that you can try to get funding from the state to help you with that development. So that's one way to build, to pay for it. Another way to pay for it is that the town, our town, any town, says, all right, we're going to build something, and we're just going to say to the taxpayers, we're going to build X number of units. It's going to cost 10, 20, 30, 40 million, and we're just throwing it on top of the tax bill.
And I think we might want to add here, we're going to build something because we have to.
Correct.
Not because we feel like it. And I think there's a definite.
Well, yeah, but I'd say this. Princeton has a really good track record on providing housing for people at every level.
Yeah.
I mean, the first affordable housing in Princeton was built in 1939. So, we go way back. So I think from around 1939 up to probably around 2000, Princeton was really a model for here's how you do affordable housing. And a little bit after that, probably not so much, but we're back into it now.
We'll go past that.
Yeah. But what's really happened across the state, though, is the way people pay for these developments now is, okay, Josh, you're Mr. Big Developer. We'll go to you and say, hey, I need 20 affordable housing units. And you say, fine, I'm happy to build them for you. But in order to make my development work, I have to build 80 market rate units to get your 20. So I'm going to build 100 units, 20 are affordable, and 80 are market rate. And the income I get on the market rate will allow me to afford to do the 20 affordables. So that 80-20 split is pretty much what the courts in New Jersey have agreed is the split that you should get. Personally, I'm like, well, wait a minute. The vast majority of these units are rental units. If you're the developer, you can increase your rent year after year after year. So I don't know that 80-20 split is really fair. So probably more 30-70, 60-40, somewhere in there might make more sense. Plus, the problem with that 80-20 split is the density you generate. Not every place, not every town in New Jersey is going to say, oh, I got this big swath of open space. There's nothing there. And, oh, next to it's a major road and there's plenty of sewer capacity and all this and no big deal. And it is a big deal almost every time you build a development is how do I do the infrastructure? How do I do the roads? How much density am I adding? How many people might go into the schools? How much traffic? And the system for building affordable housing pretty much ignores most of that. And that's a drawback. The other big drawback, I think, is that it's ironic to me. You tell every town, build affordable housing. But, oh, by the way, you can't give any preference to anybody that lives in your town. So the very people that you hope will stay in your town, especially in Princeton, because the properties are so expensive now, you have families that have lived here for generations that keep getting priced out. But you can't directly help them. So, every municipality is in part of a 3-county area. You have to market to that area. And the pricing on the housing, the affordable housing, will be based on the average of a number of economic factors from the 3 counties that your municipality is part of.
Right. You want to chat for a minute about the 27 towns in the state of New Jersey who keep suing and losing? Have any insight or thoughts about that?
Well, at this point, it's kind of crazy to say, hey, I'm going to go against building affordable housing and somehow come out on top. But, I think it is frustrating for some towns because the method to decide what your obligation is very complicated. It's not really clear. I mean, you have to have people that do pretty much this full time in order to help you figure out what your obligation should be. And it's based on vacant land. It's based on a whole number of things. But you have to watch and see, well, what did they consider vacant land? Because sometimes the vacant land allotment is based on information that's 10 years old or older. And it's like, well, stuff has been built on that. Or maybe some of that vacant land is, green acres or other open space that you can't ever build on. So it's a difficult process. And, it's basically like one size fits all. And that's just not realistic for the 500 some communities in New Jersey.
580, I think, right?
I think it's like 562.
60, yeah, it's a big number, right?
It's some number. Used to be one more, but anyway, one less.
Well, there is one more. There's my corner of Nassau Street. I just seceded from Princeton.
Yeah.
It's mine,
Gosh,
and you're going to have to pay tax. Well, you won't have to pay tax, Mark, but everybody else will to come by on this corner. So there's 581. So let's talk about what you guys are doing to comply with the state law, because you guys obviously the new plan was approved, and there's going to be, and again, this is where people get, reactive, because it's the human condition to react. They're ruining the town and all of these things. So we'll kind of run through it. And I ran through it on last week's show, and I'll link to it again, but there's going to be development right here in this corner. There's going to be development at your old fire station on Hook and Ladder, right? Which I was a member of with you.
Yes.
There's going to development at the Jewish Center, where two of my kids went to nursery school. There's going to be development on Spruce, I think by Maggie's Park, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Right. So there's going to be development there. So there's a lot that's happening, and I'm a member of town, and I say, geez, Louise, you guys are just ruining the town.
Yeah. So I think what people have to understand is that we are trying to do the best we can. It's all about trying to find a balance. I think we've been pretty good at finding the balance. If you look at the developments that have been built, so let's take some of the larger ones that have been recently built. So on either side of the one in the shopping center, on the southern end of the shopping center, closer to Clearview Avenue, Avalon Bay. Don't know that I'm a huge fan of having that in the shopping center. Probably could have been done a little bit nicer. But it's a pretty nice building, and the units, are rented out very quickly. Yeah. So I don't know where all these people are coming from, but there's really no problem filling these units, the market rate and the affordables.
Right.
At the other end,
it's interesting. People, because, we're in the real estate space, what does it mean? And I generally say, look, those apartment buildings are filled with people who want to buy your house.
Yeah.
That's the funny part, right? Like, they come here, it's transitional on the way in, and they want to buy your house. Maybe not specifically your house, but they want to live in Princeton and own a home. So it's, in a weird way, those apartments are funneling the next pipeline of people that want to live in Princeton in a transitional space until they find a house they can buy, right?
Yep.
And then on the way out, it's, I do have a lot of senior clients who are using that as transitional to sell their house, rent for a year, decide where they want to go. I was just talking to a friend of mine today. He's just at that point. Kids are gone, got to rent a couple years, make some decisions. So it's a transitional space in and out of town. Yeah. But let's talk about Milburn, right? And we have a question. Okay. So my amazing director of all things social is here. So the question on YouTube is,
Josh Street where all around the club, it seems to me I'm really impressed. I was at 5 barrels of road.
So the question is, are all the units that we just talked about are all rentals? And they're not building anything to buy. And I can fill that one if you want, Mark. The answer, unfortunately, is yes. For the most part. There is the townhouses being built on Terhune, right?
The ones on Terhune next to the wind development.
Yeah.
Be a number of those that are for sale.
Yeah. There's about 15 to 20 townhouses. So, but I think the point is, like, I was talking to a builder today who's going to build a project on Nassau Street. And, last year they were going to build condos and this year they're building apartments. And I was like, oh, that stinks, because to the point, it's just, there's less pegs on the equity ladder for people to get in town, right? It is prohibitive, and it's not going to improve at any given point. So unfortunately, for the most part, yeah, they're all rentals.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the vast majority is rental. Although I will say that on the parking lot on Franklin Avenue that used to be adjacent to the hospital, now to the Avalon Bay there, on that parking lot, we are slated to build another development. And what our hope is, and I think it's going to work out, is that half the units will be affordable and the other half will be missing middle, working class, whatever.
Market rate, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Well, no, it won't be market rate.
Market rate, I mean, yeah, the different
It'll be lower than yeah. I mean, typically what's happening now, market rate is top of the market, but we're looking to find that middle section, because that middle, as you know, I mean, you're the real estate guy, but that middle section has been pretty much wiped out in Princeton.
Yeah.
So we want to provide some of that housing, because you want people that just have a normal job to be able to still work in this town and live in this town.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's a data point I look at. 20 years ago, there was over 250, 280 single family homes in Princeton sold under $1 million. Last year, I think it was 30.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure like 3 of them didn't have a roof, you know?
Yeah.
So there's that missing middle is gone. So let's jump back to Millburn. Let's talk about that case and what you guys are trying to avoid for the residents of Princeton, like the builder's remedy. And you've spoken out in the past, I would say pretty vociferously, like, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be, victims of the builder's remedy. So why don't you explain to the residents what that is, and maybe we can use the Millburn case as context.
Yeah. So, I mean, to try to put it succinctly, if a town does not act according to the directives of, like, here's your obligation, and you just try to ignore it, and you're not doing anything to meaningfully build your obligation, a developer can come in and go to the courts and just say, okay, X town is not doing anything. It's clear they're not going to do it. So I, as a developer, am going to be a really good guy. I'm going to come in and I'll build blah, blah, blah number of units. And I want you, the courts, to agree with me. And the courts can say, yeah, forget your zoning. Your zoning is of no consequence to us. This developer is going to come in and we agree. So where normally you might have built 200 units, he's going to build 639 units. And you know what? We think that's okay. And that's a real problem.
And they appoint an outside special master to oversee that project.
Yeah.
Yeah. It basically usurps any local authority. And one of the things people are for and against housing, for and against the apartments and all these things. But what I struggle to communicate, and this is one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight, is that you and the council are trying to stay ahead of exactly that issue.
Yes. Yes, because
right?
no matter what people think of what has been done or is proposed to be built right now, builder's remedy would definitely, nobody would be happy with that. They'd be looking at us going, what the heck did you do to us? Why did you allow this to happen?
Why did you allow this to happen? And I from what I understand from people in Millburn, because they just really just pushed hard against everything, that's exactly what's happening. Like the residents of Millburn are like, we had a plan. What happened? And now it's out of their hands. So yeah, it's just, I watch the work that you guys do and agree or disagree with the council and the mayor and what they're trying to do. They're trying to preserve local control for governance with regards to real estate policy. So you want to chat about Westminster, which I think was the coup of the decades too short, coup of like a lot of years, like an amazing context. So just for context, for those of you who are not in Princeton, Westminster Choir College is located, I would say, in the heart of Princeton. Like, it's really very close to almost the middle of town. It's a beautiful site. Used to be the home of the Westminster Choir College. We're not going to get into what happened there. Ultimately, the Choir College lost control of it. And now, through eminent domain, which generally speaking I'm against, you guys got control of it. And I have to say, selfishly, I think it's pretty awesome. any insights as to what might be coming at the Westminster campus? I realize there's nothing finalized yet.
Yeah, nothing finalized yet. We still have an outside consultant helping us with some planning options. We still hope that at some point the schools in Princeton will say to us, hey, we could use part of that campus and here's how we would use it. Or maybe they'll say, no, you know what? We really don't want to use part of it. Either answer is helpful as far as figuring out the future use of the property. McCarter Theater has expressed an interest in 3 buildings. And if they get there's a program called 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐶𝐄𝐓. There's a cafe grant program that if McCarter's lucky enough to get that, they're going to buy a piece of the Choir College property, which will bring some income to us, which is a good thing, but allow them to expand a lot of their programming and things, which would be great for the community also. So I know I was talking just today to Council President Michelle Perrone-Lambros about, hey, we need to have a work session, which we'll probably do in late March, just to talk to people. Here's where we are in our planning process. Here's a whole bunch of things that could happen. No decisions to be made. It's just basically, let's have a talk about this. Where might we be headed? But I think all of the governing officials understand that, we had to pay real money for that property.
Yeah. Well, are we allowed to share the amount? I mean, it's public record at this point,
Yeah, it's
right?
like $42 million.
$42 million bucks.
Right. So,
hey, by the way, if you want to buy my corner back, I want 43 million because I just want to beat that. Okay.
Oh, man. I was going to cap it at 41, but okay.
Okay. All right, fine. You're a tough negotiator. I'll take 41. So over $40 million was spent, which means
a tax impact.
Right.
And that's why we need to figure out what we're going to do with the property, how much of the property we can monetize. Right. And again, it's going to be another balance thing because people are so happy that we were able to figure out a way. And trust me, it took a lot of work for us to find this solution where we were able to buy the property, which I firmly believe is in the best interest of this community long term. But we have to find a way that when we're done, people go, all right, there's enough of the openness left, but you did do stuff there so that we, the taxpayers, aren't paying this huge tax bill forever to pay for that piece of property.
Right.
So that's where we're headed is how do we.
And I know, one of the things, Mark, I will say, like, you're very vocal about, like, let's get to it. And I know you've said that specifically about the Westminster parcel. Yeah. I know you were probably, I don't know if it's fair to say, but I'm going to say it, you were probably the most instrumental person in pulling this off, which the plans that were being considered there, oh my Lord, there people would have been, pitchforks and torches. It would have been pretty bad scene here in Princeton, right? So the fact that you pulled it off is amazing. And I will give you kudos for saying, look, we got to monetize it, figure it out, because that tax bill is going to hit people pretty hard.
Yes, it is.
All right. Pretty hard.
Yeah.
So let's talk budget. So you got a budget coming up. It's always a fun topic.
Yeah. So we're getting into budget season for us, which will be both the operating and the capital budget. And the governing body is going to have a meeting actually on March 12th. And it's a 2-part meeting. Part of the meeting is setting our annual goals. And this is one of the things I'm most proud of. And there's very few things that I'll take credit for because almost everything we do is really, it's a team, right? It's a whole bunch of people making things happen. But I really pushed hard after I became mayor for this town, for the governing body to stop looking at every department we have and saying to them, what are your goals? And we'll adopt those. That's something backwards. We as the governing body are supposed to set the goals up here. And then everybody else is supposed to say, okay, how do we set our goals based on those goals? And that's something we've now done consistently for a number of years. So anyway, March 12th, we'll be looking at the goals for this year. And then the other part of that meeting is going to be looking at what is currently the 6-year capital plan and just starting to talk about it because the dollar cost, the tax impact of everything on that 6-year plan, there's no way we're ever going to do it all. We can't afford it. The tax impact is way too much. So, we need to go to the next step, which is let's set some priorities. Let's figure what are things that have to be done, which things, probably should be done, but maybe not immediate. And then which things are just kind of, well, that'd be great, but what's the value? So, this is the next logical step. We got the goal setting down. Now, when it comes to the capital stuff, what are the must-haves? What are the should-haves? And what are the ones that, look, We just can't afford it. So this will be the start of that process. And, the 6-year plan might grow into a 10-year plan. We'll see where it goes. And some projects are going to be like, that's just too big. Just scale it down. But the thing about the goal setting is it helps create a mindset, the mindset of the big picture. So if you look at a capital project and say, I got 8 capital projects, and you look at each one alone, oh yeah, include this. Oh yeah, include that. But if you look at all 8 together, you're like, wait a minute, you've ballooned 5 of these, and now look at my total bill here. So let's look at everything at once, and let's kind of get things under control. So that's where we're headed with that.
That's great. Yeah, and it's refreshing to hear you say that, because I know it was very backwards in this town for a long time. Like everybody had such autonomy. You're like, well, who's calling the shots here? It's Mark Freda's calling the shots.
Well, I wish I could say that, but
I can say it, Mark. It's my show. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah,
you, me, and my dad listening right now, so don't worry about it.
True or not, it is. But
so it's one of my personal bugaboos. I will be good in asking the question. Any news about streamlining all the historic zones in Princeton, the 21 or 22 zones? I know we talked about that last time you were on the show. Any news or update on that?
Yeah. So the town has, the 2 towns combined January 1 of 2013.
Right.
The zoning codes of the 2 towns are 2 separate codes. So you come in and say, hey, I want to put an addition on my house. And the first thing we got to figure out is, are you in the former borough or the former township? So we have never been able to combine the zoning codes. We finally went out last year and hired a professional firm that does this. And it's a very complicated process. It'll probably take them like 2 years, give or take. It could take longer. We'll see, to combine everything and come up with a realistic, zoning code. So, thank God that finally it took a while to convince everybody that, hey, having a few elected officials meet once a month or a couple times a month just is never going to, I don't know. For 12 years, you weren't able to figure it out. Let's go hire somebody that does this every day and let's get this done. So anyway, that's a huge step forward.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. And it's not like we're in the middle of the biggest bottleneck of housing need ever. And it's just like, streamlining a little bit.
Yes. And it's kind of crazy because, you live on one side of the street and I live on the other side across from you, hypothetically, and I can do something and you can't do it, or vice versa. So it's like, come on, and that will definitely be something that makes a lot of people happy and a lot of people unhappy. But I guess that's policy and property. I mean, that's just what happens when, you're in governance. And the one thing I will say about, Princeton, it is, not only is it a desirable place for people to live, but the level of engagement is pretty high in this town. Yeah, it is. It is, which is a great thing. And look, as elected officials, we should be encouraging that engagement. We should welcome that engagement, because there's 7 of us, all right, but 7 out of 30-some thousand people that live in this town. We can't think of everything. We're not experts in everything. We're not always going to get it right. We can't think of every possible option on anything. So it's like the more people are engaged and the more people share their thoughts and experiences with us, the better at the end of the day that the decisions that we make will be. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to end it in terms of how can people get involved, Mark?
Yeah.
Right. Other than my dad, who doesn't live in Princeton, who's watching the show, right? How can people get involved? I want to have a voice. And I think a lot of times people I want to have, and there's a meeting going on right now about this corner, right? The Jugtown, I can't, hopefully nobody's hurting each other in that meeting, but how can people get involved? What are things they can do? Where can they go to find out information?
Yep. Well, the first thing to do is just go to our website, princetonnj.gov. Pretty easy. And, there's a calendar on there. And the calendar is going to show you, here's every group that's meeting every day, every month. So, you want to listen into a planning board, a zoning board, a council meeting, you can do that, or you can go attend them. A lot of the meetings are still virtual. The council meetings, we meet, it's a hybrid. You can come in person or come over Zoom or watch it on YouTube. But if you're on Zoom, at least you could try to participate in the meeting. We have a weekly newsletter that people can sign up for on the website. You should get that you're going to get a whole bunch of information from that. We have a whole bunch of boards, committees, and commissions. Again, on the website, there's an application process. So you're real interested in the library. Maybe you want to apply, say, hey, can you consider me for a library board position next time there's an opening? Or, you know, the environmental commission or the shade tree commission or whatever. There's a whole list there. So,
I'm going to sign up for historic preservation.
and historic preservation, your favorite. Anyway, there's lots of ways to get actively involved, or at least get involved enough so that you're getting information so you know what's going on, which is important.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm shamefully, I watch the meetings. I watch them on Zoom, but shamefully under-involved in the town. And, part of it's just working. It's 8:00. I'm still here. You're still there, right? So part of it's just the schedule, but I do applaud it. I want everybody to know. So Mark took more or less an hour of his time tonight. And I hope, again, agree or disagree on policy, and that, policy and property, that is the context of this evening's broadcast. How tirelessly these folks work for Princeton, and all the things that you heard this man talk about tonight, the planning, the town council meetings, the budget meetings. More or less, in my opinion, running Princeton more like a business in a positive way. Like, let's have objectives and let's meet those objectives, right? Let's actually satisfy our shareholders, which is the taxpayers. That's all for $19,000 a year. So, and I don't say that to make light. I say that of like, this guy's highly committed. So, Mark, you're pretty big on Instagram. How can people follow you on Instagram?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think it's Mayor Mark Freda. I think that's where my tag is.
Mayor Mark Freda. I guess go to Instagram and find Mark.
Yeah, find me.
That? Mark Freda, yeah. Mayor Mark Freda, the mayor.
Mayor. But it's a good way to find out what's going on in town. I try to.
You are unbelievable
and publicize a lot of things so people know what's happening in town.
You do. You are, like I said, you're probably Princeton's most tireless cheerleader in town. I watch you and I wonder when you sleep, if at all.
Sleep's a bad habit. So
your Instagram is now in the chat for folks watching it and or watching it later. You can find it there, and someone said, "Thank you, Mr. Mayor." And I did not put them up to that, Mark. That was them doing that. So, Mark, thank you very much for being part of this. I really, as you know, genuinely appreciate your time because you don't really have any of it. So again, if you want to take away anything from tonight, right? Context matters, right? These guys, the elected officials of Princeton, right? Government is structured, planning is deliberate, and understanding the framework that Mark talked about hopefully changes how you see the conversation of housing and what's happening, not only in Princeton, I think, Mark, but across the state. Would you agree? Like, yeah, there are big issues here, Oh,
yeah, there are. Yeah, they impact everybody every day.
Yeah. And so I do thank you for your time and your expertise. And again, this is the Wilton Report, and I'm Josh Wilton. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for allowing me to have my own municipality right here on the corner of Harrison Street. And
so obvious that we should. But thanks.
I have to go. I got to put the toll booth up for tomorrow morning's rush hour. Okay.
There you go.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate your time. Tell everyone I said hello.
Yep. You take care.
Hey, buddy. Thanks.